97% of people who read a success book never apply a single idea from it. Not because the ideas are bad, not because they didn't understand it, but because of one uncomfortable truth almost nobody wants to admit. And in the next few minutes, you're going to hear that truth. And you're going to see exactly why it's been standing between you and the life you actually want. But here's what most people never realize. The formula for success has never been hidden. It's been sitting in plain sight the entire time. The real reason is far more surprising than you think, and it's going to change how you see every failed attempt you've ever made. If you're serious about actually changing your life this year instead of just talking about it, take a second to like this video and subscribe, because what you're about to hear is going to challenge the way you think about effort, discipline, and who you really are. Let's start with a man named Marcus. Marcus was 31, working in a warehouse, telling everyone around him that this year was going to be different. He downloaded the productivity apps. He bought the $40 planner. He watched hours of success content every single week. And yet, 12 months later, nothing in his life had actually moved. Same job, same bank account, same excuses. Here's where things get interesting. One evening, a coworker asked him a simple question that most people are too afraid to ask themselves. He said, "Marcus, if I gave you $100,000 right now, would your daily habits actually change? Or would you just have more money to waste the exact same way?" Marcus sat with that question for a long time, and it hit him harder than any motivational video ever had. The problem was never his circumstances. The problem was that his identity hadn't changed. He was still thinking, acting, and deciding like the exact same person, just hoping different results would somehow show up around him. This is the first psychological trap that quietly ruins most people's progress, and almost nobody talks about it directly. Your brain doesn't actually care about your goals. It cares about staying consistent with who it already believes you are. Psychologists call this identity-consistent behavior. If you see yourself as someone who's bad with money, your brain will unconsciously create situations that prove that belief right, even if it means sabotaging a good opportunity. If you see yourself as someone who always quits, your brain will hunt for the first valid-sounding excuse to bail the moment things get difficult. This is why information alone never changes anyone. You can learn everything there is to know about fitness, business, or discipline, but if your identity hasn't shifted, your brain will always pull you back to familiar behavior. Because familiar feels safe, even when familiar is exactly what's keeping you stuck. But that's not the most important part. Let's rewind history for a second, to a story most people have heard the ending of, but never really studied properly. Sylvester Stallone was broke, sleeping in a bus station at one point, when he wrote the script for Rocky. Every studio wanted to buy that script, but every single one wanted to cast a famous actor instead of him. He said no, over and over, even while he had almost nothing left. Most people look at that story and only see stubborn confidence. What they miss is something deeper. Stallone wasn't just protecting a script. He was protecting an identity he had already decided to become, long before the world agreed with him. He acted like the lead character of his own life, before there was any external proof that decision made sense. And that's the real lesson hiding inside that story. Identity comes first, evidence comes later. Most people wait for proof before they believe in themselves. The rare few believe first and then go collect the proof. Let's talk about why this feels so unnatural, because there's real psychology behind it. Human beings are wired with something called present bias, meaning we're built to overvalue comfort right now and undervalue benefits that are far away. This wiring kept our ancestors alive thousands of years ago, but today it works against almost everyone. It's why scrolling feels easier than working out. It's why spending feels better in the moment than saving for a future you can't fully picture yet. Average people let this wiring run their entire life. Strategic people learn to recognize it, and they choose the harder, short-term action anyway, because they understand something most people never fully accept. Motion is not the same as progress. Watching another video about discipline is motion. Actually training on the day you don't feel like it is progress. Reading 10 books about investing is motion. Actually putting money in and leaving it there through the uncomfortable drops is progress. Most people confuse the two for their entire lives and wonder years later why nothing ever really changed. If any part of this is starting to feel personal, drop a comment below and be honest about where you've been choosing motion instead of progress, because naming it clearly is usually the first real step toward finally fixing it. Here's a question worth sitting with. If nobody on earth ever found out what you accomplished, would you still put in the work anyway? That question exposes something uncomfortable. A huge percentage of what looks like effort in this world is actually performance for an audience. People push hard when someone's watching and quietly stop the moment nobody's checking in. Real transformation almost always happens in private. In the early mornings, nobody applauds. In the version of you that keeps showing up before there's any proof it's working. This is the real difference between consumers and creators. Consumers wait for permission, wait for the perfect plan, wait to feel motivated before they move. Creators act with incomplete information because they've learned something most people never learn. Clarity comes after you act, not before it. Let's bring in one more story because it shows exactly how fear disguises itself as intelligence. A woman named Priya wanted to leave her corporate job for years to start her own consulting business. Every time she got close, her mind produced a perfectly reasonable sounding excuse. The market's saturated. She needs more certifications first. The timing isn't right with the economy right now. These sounded like smart, cautious thoughts, but they weren't logic. They were fear, wearing a very convincing disguise. Fear rarely introduces itself honestly. It almost always shows up dressed as responsible thinking. One day, a friend asked her directly, "What would you actually do if you knew for certain you couldn't fail?" Her answer came out instantly, without a single second of hesitation. That's when she realized the plan was never actually the real problem. Her fear of failing publicly, in front of people who knew her, had been the real obstacle the entire time. She started quietly, taking on one small client on the side while still employed. She made mistakes. She adjusted constantly. 18 months later, she replaced her corporate salary completely, and she says the version of her that finally started wasn't smarter than before. She was just finally willing to look foolish in public, on the way to becoming good at something new. This next part might be the most important idea in this entire video, so stay with me. Success requires you to be willing to look inexperienced, to fail in front of people, to start at zero while others around you appear to already be ahead. Most people would rather stay comfortably unknown than risk visible failure in front of anyone who might judge them. That single fear, the fear of public judgment, quietly destroys more potential than any actual lack of talent ever could. The people who eventually break through were rarely the most gifted in the room. They were simply the ones who decided that looking foolish temporarily was a fair price to pay for eventually becoming who they actually wanted to be. Think about the real difference between reacting and thinking. Most people move through life reacting. Something happens and they respond emotionally and instantly, without ever pausing. Strategic thinkers pause first. They ask themselves, what response here actually serves where I'm trying to go long term, instead of just what feels satisfying in this exact moment. This single shift, choosing thinking over reacting, choosing long-term identity over short-term comfort, choosing ownership over blame, is the actual line that separates people who slowly build extraordinary lives from people who stay in the exact same spot for 10, 20, even 30 years, quietly wondering why nothing around them ever seems to change. And that brings us to the real formula. The one almost nobody wants to actually follow, because it's simple, but it was never meant to be easy. Decide who you're becoming before you have any proof it's working. Choose the uncomfortable action consistently, even on the days you don't feel like it. Take the step before you feel ready, because clarity always comes after action, never before it. Fail visibly, adjust quietly, and keep going regardless of who happens to be watching. That's the entire formula. There's no missing secret hiding behind a paywall somewhere. There's no piece of information you don't already have access to. The truth is, you already know exactly what to do. You've known for a long time. The real question was never about what to do next. It was always about whether you're finally willing to become the kind of person who actually follows through. If this video is genuinely hitting something in you right now, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear exactly this today. Because sometimes the right words landing at the right moment can quietly change the entire direction of someone's life. Think back to Marcus, still working the same job, but making different decisions now, one small identity shift at a time. Think of Stallone, believing in a version of himself the world hadn't agreed to yet. Think of Priya, choosing to look inexperienced for a while so she could eventually become undeniable. None of them was special before they started. They simply stopped waiting to feel ready, and they began acting like the person their goals actually required. That same decision is sitting in front of you right now, in this exact moment, completely regardless of what your life has looked like up until today. You don't need a new plan. You don't need more information. You need to close this video and go do one uncomfortable thing today that the future version of you will genuinely thank you for. Because the formula was never hidden from you. It was only ever waiting for someone willing enough to actually live it out. In starting today, that person can be you.